12 years ago, when I was working in the Knesset, I hosted Bassem at the Knesset Forum on International Relations, and this is what he said 12 years ago. Since the beginning of the Intifada, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed either for being collaborators or have been executed under capital punishment. Today, the weapons in the hands of the PA are not only directed toward Israel, but also toward the Palestinian people themselves. And it's so ironic that what happened 12 years ago is still happening today. The Palestinians are still being persecuted by their own people, by their own government. If they collaborate with Israel, they are being hunted by the Palestinian Authority and by Hamas. And this is really the quandary, the issue that the Palestinians have so much potential and deserve so much better. But 12 years later, their own leadership is still stealing from them, is still hunting them down, and the corruption and the picture on the ground has not changed. So Bassem can break that down for us. He hails from the city of Jericho, which is the poorest city in the Palestinian Authority. So he knows exactly what it's like for Palestinians to be under the real occupation of anarchy and dictatorship from the Palestinian Authority themselves, and how it's impossible to make ends meet when everything is stacked against you, thanks to the corrupt leadership around you. He founded the Palestinian Human Rights Monitoring Group, and now he's a political analyst, famed in Israel, both in TV and radio. So please help me welcome Bassem.
Good afternoon to everybody. I would like to thank the Fellows Project and of course the inmate who made this event possible. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you. You know, when we are talking about probably 10 years ago, when I was in the Knesset and I was attending the conference with Dennis Ross, I think that I am a person who already realized that we are going to stuck in such situation since the Oslo Agreement has been signed in 1993. I remember that after the Oslo Agreement, a journalist from Ma'arif newspaper, one of the leading Israeli newspaper, contacted me. And she said, I want to make a profile about you, but I want you to tell me which kind of a Palestinian state is going to be in the future. And what is going on today under the Palestinian Authority, I already said it in '93, which means 24 years ago. Because I'm a person who believes that the Palestinian leadership almost developed and grown up under the dictatorship regime. They grown up and developed in Syria, in Sudan, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Algeria, in Tunisia, in Libya, but not in Germany, not in France, not in the US, not in Finland. And it looks like to me that the Palestinian leadership almost learned very well from the Arab regime how to be a real dictator. Today, in my opinion, we the Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza almost held as hostages by our own leadership. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Nobody can persuade me otherwise. Because since 1948, there was no Palestinian leadership in that time. There was an Arab leadership in that time. What the Arabs did to the Palestinians? In my opinion, they did zero thing. In my opinion, when the Palestinians 3 days ago, on the 15th of May, celebrating what they call it the Nakba, the tragedy, the disaster, I think that the one who is responsible on the Palestinian Nakba or disaster or tragedy is the Arabs, not Israel at all. Not Israel at all. There was a war. There was a war between one country, there was no country at that time, and another 21 Arab countries. 21 Arab countries in that time. What's happening? Let's call Israel a militia in that time, yeah, not a country. What the Arabs did? Did the Arabs really succeed to defend the Palestinians in that time? Of course not. I used to teach my colleague Palestinians all the time, especially in the refugee camps, that homeland is not the place where you're born. Homeland is the place where you can find dignity, justice, and freedoms. Any country around the world who will assure me these three issues, I have no problem to be considered as their own citizen. Now, let's go back a little bit to the current situation. If we will look to inside Gaza today, we will find that there are 4 different players playing inside the Gaza Strip. The first player is the Egyptian government. Second player is the Palestinian Authority of the West Bank. Third player, of course, the Hamas. But the fourth player is Israel. What is the difference here between these 4 different players? The first 2 players, which is the Egyptian government and the Palestinian Authority, are very interested in the destruction of the Gaza Strip, in destroying the Gaza Strip. And the other 2 players, which is the Hamas and Israel, I believe that they are much more interested in the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. Imagine, Israel interested in the reconstruction of Gaza, but we, the Palestinians in the West Bank, are much more interested in the destroying the Gaza Strip. The Egyptian government believes that the Hamas is a terrorist organization, and they already declared on that publicly. The Egyptian government believes that while more pressure Egypt will impose on Gaza, probably this is the only way how to get rid from the Hamas organization. What is the interest of the Palestinian Authority? The Palestinian Authority believes that while Egypt imposing more and more pressure on Gaza, that probably will pave the way to the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza and to recontrol Gaza like they used to do till 2007. Now, if Israel and the Hamas almost agreed on the reconstruction of Gaza, where is the conflict between Israel and Hamas? The conflict is that the Hamas said that the priority for the reconstruction of Gaza should have to go to our own tunnels and to our own military capability. While Israel said, no way. The priority for the reconstruction in Gaza should have to go to the houses and to the other civil facilities which has been destroyed during the summer war in 2014. And this is unfortunately how the whole process of the reconstruction of Gaza almost delayed for 2.5 years. Friends, if you will look today to the Rafah passage, which is dividing Gaza from Egypt, during the last year, 2016, the Rafah passage was open only for 20 days. During the whole year, last year, only 20 days. How many Palestinians succeed to cross it from Gaza to inside Egypt? 20,000 only. If we will move backward to 2011, as an example, how many Palestinians succeed to cross the Rafah passage? 460,000. 500,000 people. So the number dropped from 500,000 to 20,000 only. And that's showing you the real pressure that Egypt is trying right now to impose on the Gaza Strip. If you will ask any ordinary Gazan today, which country really imposing the blockade on the Gaza Strip? Everybody will tell you Egypt, not Israel. Because Israel is the only country today which is providing the food, medicines, electricity, and water. No one Arab country provided anything to Gaza. This is the real situation right now in Gaza. Now we are hearing in the news, which is of course the news is very interesting to highlight it, lack of electricity in Gaza. Why there is a lack of electricity in Gaza? For one reason, which is never mentioned in the media, by the way. That the Hamas leaders every month using electricity in 8 million shekels. How many shekels they are paying for it? 0 shekel. This is why we have a lack of electricity in Gaza. It's very well known among the Gazan, but it's never came out towards the international community. And the international community is very interesting to keep blind eyes, by the way, on this issue. Why the Hamas leaders are not paying for the electricity that they are using, and I am the civilian who should have to subsidize the electricity of Hamas. Why? This is why there is a lack of electricity in Gaza. No more and no less. Now, if we will move a little bit to the West Bank, I am trying to be a little bit shorter here. I am a person who believes that if Mr. Netanyahu tomorrow will meet with President Abbas, probably the first question that Netanyahu is going to ask Abbas, whom you are representing, Mr. President? West Bank, Gaza Strip, or Palestinians diaspora? In my opinion, Abbas only representing his 2 sons and his wife. I think that the majority of the Palestinians almost lost the trust in their own leadership. If you will come today to any ordinary Palestinian and asking him, what are the most three priorities that you are seeking? He will say a job to survive. He will say to secure the education system and the health system for my children. Nobody is talking about settlements. Nobody is talking about the wall. Nobody even talking about the foundation of the Palestinian state. Which means that the majority of the Palestinians are people who are seeking dignity rather than identity. And when I am talking about identity, about dignity, the meaning here is how to improve the economic situation of the Palestinians. I am a person who believes that if we will be able to increase the economy of the Palestinians, that's it probably will decrease the Palestinian violence. I think that the Israeli government is very aware about that. Rather than the Palestinian Authority, rather than the French or the Germans, or even the American administration. And here, where we should have to blame the international community. That since the Oslo Agreement until today, almost 24 years passed, the international community kept a blind eyes on the economic issues, and they try only to focus on the political issues. And this is why the international community almost failed to find any solution between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Hundreds of billions of dollars has been donated to the Oslo Agreement and the actors of Oslo. Did these hundreds of billions of dollars succeed to create one job in the West Bank or in the Gaza Strip? No, not at all. And everybody knows where that money almost gone. Everybody knows. I think we reach a point here that the international community should have to evaluate its own foreign policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think that we need a peace conference for the international community rather than between the Israelis and the Palestinians. At least to find peace between the international community themselves. The major problem of the Palestinians and the Israelis, in my opinion, that we already lost the conflict from our hands. And the conflict today in the hands of the others. No doubt that there are countries today around the world who became a part of the conflict rather than a part of the solution. And the question how we can stop these countries. Iran is very well known as a country who want to destroy Israel via Hezbollah and via Hamas. It's well known. What the international community tried to do towards Iran, zero thing. But since probably 3-4 years ago, also Qatar in the Gulf joined Iran. Also Turkey joined Iran. The president of Turkey will be very soon here to meet the new president of the US. What is Mr. Trump is going to tell Erdogan, Sultan Erdogan? He's not a president anymore. He is a sultan because he's going to create his own Islamic Caliphate and to annex Gaza to Turkey. What is Mr. Trump is going to tell him? I think that if the Palestinians and the Israelis will not wake up, no peace will be achieved. I think that we are so sleepy people, and the others are running the conflict as they want. I'm not expecting anything from the new American administration. I'm not expecting anything. I think that the only one who can solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be only the Israelis and the Palestinians. The question is, what is the international community can provide in turn to start building the bridges of confidence between the Palestinians and the Israelis? I don't want the international community to bring peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, because they couldn't bring any peace. They couldn't. At least to go around and to start building the platform between the Israelis and the Palestinians in turn to reach a kind of deal. This is what I am expecting from the international community. France will never solve the problem. Germany will never solve it. Come on, what you are talking about? Trump, forget it. I think that we, the Palestinians and the Israelis, must have to wake up and to start looking towards the future of our children. People who are stabbing in Jerusalem today are people who begged by some countries around the world. How we can stop that? How we can stop that? By stabbing an Israeli and killing him, will that bring any prosperity to the Palestinians? Of course not. Everybody knows that very well. Everybody knows that very well. The question, how the new American administration can stop is such funding of terror. This is what we want from Mr. Trump, not to make peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It is a very important issue. I think that you are the Americans here should have to raise it with your own representatives in the Congress. You have your own representatives here who are very influential on the foreign policy of the US towards the world. This is very important to raise it and to talk about it. Yesterday I was at the Capitol here. Yesterday I met with some staff of representatives. But this is not my first time. And it looks like that it is not to be my last time. How many times I can appear at the Capitol Hill and to repeat the same things? Is anybody really aware towards what is going on? Looks like that the international community looking to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as a business conflict rather than it is a political one. It's business. It's making money for everybody, not only for the Israelis and the Palestinians, by the way. And the question is how we can stop such kind of interests and to take into our interests the future of our children, not the future of ourselves. This is the question. Today, Arabs are not really so care about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Because I used to say all the time, if we will look today to the Middle East map and how the Middle East is surrounded by the Islamic terror and how the Islamic terror increasing in the Middle East, we will find that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict probably the most safe place in the Middle East. As an Arab, as a Muslim, I don't want to be in Libya. I don't want to be in Iraq. I don't want to be in Syria. I don't want to be in Yemen. It's much safer for myself and for my children to continue living under the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I am a person who believes that the economic issue is one of the most important issues here. I am a person who believes that an economic prosperity, it probably will be able to pave the way towards a solution between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but not politics. I think that the international community should have to look into the issue of the economy. I wish that the new American administration under Mr. Trump will start looking much more carefully towards the economic situation of the Palestinians and the Israelis. Nobody, as I said, will be able to bring peace. Neither President Trump, never, nor the coming president of the US. The economic issue is a very important issue, as I said also, that while we will increase the Palestinian economy, that will decrease the Palestinian violence. I am a person who believes in that. I am living in the West Bank. I am living in Jericho. I am going around every day in the West Bank, into the cities, refugee camps, and in the villages, and I know what people really are talking about. Just a week ago, I met with 10 Palestinians, and we fixed a meeting with the mayor of Efrat settlement in Gush Etzion. Why we fixed that meeting? Not to talk politics, not to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict or solution. We fixed the meeting to tell the mayor of Efrat that there are hundreds of Palestinians, your neighbors, are jobless. How you can help them to find jobs. 10 Palestinians joined me on that meeting. And when the mayor said, I want to take a picture with you and to post it on the Facebook, no one rejected that. They said, we will be more than happy to have the picture with you. I think that the Palestinians became more and more awareness towards their own situation. And this is for one reason, because we already lost the trust in our own leadership. I believe that the Palestinian leadership, even in Gaza and in the West Bank, are much more to continue keeping the Palestinians as hostages under the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Because by keeping the Palestinians as hostages under the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that will only benefit the Palestinian leadership.
My first question is, Bassem, do you see any future leadership for the Palestinians waiting in the wings? And of course, I don't mean Barghouti, but I mean, you know, is there anybody that you see that we don't know about? And what role do you think that the Saudis or other Gulf states could play in making a change of leadership come about, or helping it come about?
Thank you. This is what I used to say all the time when people asking me, what is the alternative to Abbas? Then my answer is Abbas. Because there is a lack of leadership among the Palestinians, unfortunately. And this is something which I used to know to discuss it in very often with a lot of Palestinians, especially in the refugee camps in the West Bank. We have somebody who called Mohammed Dahlan, who used to be the head of the preventive security forces in Gaza under Arafat leadership. And he is the first one who escaped from Gaza after the Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2007. And right now he is living in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. He considered as the most real competent to Abbas. He still has his own supporters in Gaza. He still has his own supporters in the West Bank. And Abbas is very worried from his supporters, by the way. Sometimes, when I used to mention to the Palestinians the name of Mohammed Dahlan, then Palestinians said, listen, Bassem, but Mohammed Dahlan is also corrupt. Then I said, you know, you are right. But personally, I prefer a young corrupt rather than an old corrupt. This is unfortunately how I can describe the both of them. I need at least somebody to start thinking not only about himself, but also about his own children, about his children. We need it. Now, towards Marwan Barghouti. Marwan Barghouti is a person who almost sentenced for 5 times a life imprisonment by the Israelis. He probably considered today as the most famous Palestinian leader among the Palestinians. But imagine if Israel tomorrow will decide to release Marwan Barghouti. I am a person who believes that if Israel will release Marwan Barghouti will lose his popularity among the Palestinians. Why? Because you sentenced for 5 times life imprisonment. How you released after 16 years? Something suspicious here. So sometimes I used to say, it's better for Marwan Barghouti to keep himself under the Israeli jail than to be released. Then he can be considered a leader forever under the Israeli jail. I don't think that Abbas is allowing today to any new young generation to create their own political movement in the West Bank. Sometimes I used to ask myself, when Abbas is meeting the leaders of the world, which is recently on the 2 weeks ago, he was in Washington, D.C., and he met with President Trump. Did Mr. Trump ask Abbas when he is going to make elections as an example? I'm quite sure not. Because you know, this is the problem of the American administrations. In the past 30 years ago, that they are supporting dictators in the Arab countries rather than they are supporting Democrats in the Arab countries. This is the agenda of the United Nations, of the United States, because looks like that the United States knows well that the Arabs couldn't survive under democracy, and unfortunately, the so-called Arab Spring almost proves that we couldn't live under democracy. I must have to tell you, I don't know if you remember, I'm a person who is running, you know, after the events in Israel. 6 months ago, there was an incident that a Palestinian get into a settlement and he killed a 13-year-old girl who was sleeping. You remember that? Yes. Netanyahu decided on that day that Palestinian workers who are working in the settlements shouldn't have to continue their work. Netanyahu said that. The Israeli Minister of Defense, Lieberman, stood up and he told Netanyahu, no way, the Palestinian workers should have to continue entering to inside the settlements. Why? Because after the investigation of the army, they found that this Palestinian who entered to the settlement is not working in the settlement at all. He just smuggled from outside. So this is very important. Now, today we have around 25,000 Palestinians workers who are working in the Israeli settlements, only in the West Bank. 25. I think that the Israelis knows exactly what they are doing. I think that the Israelis knows well what they are doing. And according to the military sources, with the all running cars and the stabbing since October 2015, no one Palestinian worker were among these people. No one. According to the Israelis, not according to the Palestinians. I think that the Israeli government is very aware about that, and it is the opposite. I think that in the last meeting between Mr. Netanyahu and President Trump, Trump mentioned to Netanyahu very clearly how we can improve the economic situation of the Palestinians. I think that Trump is very aware, and this is the main message of President Trump today towards the Israeli government.
Question that I would like to
I am going to give you the solution. First of all, I am a person who don't want to talk what might happen in the coming 20 years. Because from today till the coming 20 years, I didn't see any solution. So probably after 20 years, if you will ask me the question, maybe I will have an idea how the conflict should have to be solved. So this is why I am not giving any kind of solutions, because I didn't see any kind of solution between the Israelis and the Palestinians, at least for the coming 20 years. After 20 years, we probably will start thinking about it.
No, but I care for my country. I want to see my country prosper and safe and secure. So I think 100 years in
I think that it is safe and secure right now. I think that it is safe and secure. I already said it, that if we will look to the Middle East map, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict probably the most safe place in the Middle East. I said it very clearly. So Israel is secure and safe. Don't worry. The Saudis will defend you. Don't worry. Now, secondly, I just have something. Now, towards Jordan, I think that you have a completely wrong information when you are talking about 90% of the Jordanians are Palestinians. I must have to tell you that these days, the Palestinians are the minority in Jordan. Listen well. Look to me. If we will look to the 1991, when the first Gulf War took place, 1990, and to the 2003, where the second Gulf War took place, and since 6 years ago, the Syria Arab Spring, almost Jordan have over than 5 million refugees from Iraq and from Syria.
Wow.
5 million, I am telling you. I can give you a very good statistics. 5 million people today you have in Jordan from Syria and Iraq. What is the total population of Jordan today? 9 million. 9 million. Listen. I am traveling a lot to Jordan. I know exactly.
These are not citizens. I'm talking about citizens.
No, I'm talking about citizens. No, the Jordanians, the Jordanian policy is if you are coming to Jordan with $500,000, within 24 hours you will get citizen. Because it's a corrupt regime. So, today, you have 5 million people from Syria and from Iraq, and another 4 million people who are 3 probably million Palestinians and 1 million Jordanian. They made, a census just in September last year, and they found that the total population in Jordan today is 9 million people. First of all, I am still holding the Jordanian passport,
Okay,
even that I am not a Jordanian.
okay, fair enough.
But in the meantime, I am not allowed to get the Palestinian passport.
Forget Palestine, there's no more Palestine.
And it is also very difficult to get the Israeli passport.
No, you wouldn't,
I'm
no, but the
trying.
plan is not to make all the Palestinians
I am trying.
Israelis.
I am trying to explain to you. I already got the point that you are looking into.
Okay,
Now, there was a conference 2 months ago in Jerusalem, organized by the so-called Women in Green.
right, okay.
I used to know about Women in Black. Looks like that they changed the color. So Women in Green ran a conference in Jerusalem.
Okay,
The title of the conference was How to Apply the Israeli Rule in the West Bank, which means to annex the West Bank.
absolutely.
I was shocked during that conference that 10 Palestinians from the West Bank attended the conference from the West Bank.
Why not?
Listen, probably if the invitation was sent to the whole West Bank, I believe probably 500,000 Palestinians will attend it. Now, those Palestinians participated in panels in front of the mics, in front of the cameras, talking about how they are really interested to continue living under the Israeli.
It should.
Even somebody from Hebron invited Netanyahu to his house. I think that this is also can be considered as a kind of frustration of the Palestinians from their own leadership.
Yeah.
And the Palestinians are very aware today that under the Israelis, probably they can guarantee their future. I must have to tell you that today in East Jerusalem, you have around 160,000 Palestinians living in East Jerusalem. 160,000.
Some are citizens, no?
Some of them, let's say, around 30% of them almost holding the Israeli passport. The Israeli passport. I was at the Ministry of Interior just a month ago to renew my ID. And I found there on the line around over than 500 people waiting.
Oh my God.
When I start talking with people, what you came here to apply for, most of them came to apply for citizenship. And I asked, why you need it? You don't have a Jordanian passport? He said, I have a Jordanian passport, but with the Israeli passport is stronger. Listen. Then I continue asking that if you will get the Israeli passport, the Israelis will never give you a passport until you will return your Jordanian passport to the Jordanian authorities. Then people said, I'm not care about it. Listen. Listen to the word that they said. the Israeli passport is stronger. That means that people are looking for a much better things. And this is what I used to say, that in the coming 5 years, if Israel will continue accepting Palestinians from East Jerusalem as citizens, at least in the coming 5 years, the Palestinian Authority couldn't even say a word about East Jerusalem as its own capital. Because then the Israelis will come by saying, come on, we have 55% of the Palestinians here, our own citizens. How you can claim your own capital here? And I think that this is exactly let's say the policy that Israel today is trying to implement on East Jerusalem to accept more and more Palestinians as citizens. If we will take Gaza today, you have around 64% of the Palestinians in Gaza are living in the refugee camps.
Wow.
You have 8 different refugee camps in Gaza. If we look to the West Bank, you have around 54% of the Palestinians living in the refugee camps. We have 12 different refugee camps in the West Bank. Now, this is a big question. When a country like France, as an example, or like Norway, or like Spain, standing and saying, if Israel is not going to resume the negotiation talks with the Palestinians, we are going to recognize the Palestinian state, the Palestinian state. And sometimes I'm asking myself, which state you are going to recognize? A state which is in a lack of institutions. A state which is in a lack of an economic sources. A state where is over than 54% of its population are living in a refugee camp. This is not the state that I am dreaming for. This is not the state that I am looking for. We have a very big problem today with those countries who are standing up to support Abbas rather than to support the Palestinians. Those countries who are in the past, let's say 50 years, what is 50 years? 68, 9 years, those countries continue supporting UNRWA, the UN Workers Relief Agency, to continue keeping the Palestinian refugees as hostages in the refugee camp. Because the money that UNRWA today receiving from the international community, which is around $1.6 billion a year, the US is paying $400 million a year for UNRWA. What is UNRWA is really doing to the Palestinian refugees? This is a very big question. I would love to see you tomorrow morning running to the Capitol Hill and calling your representatives why we are supporting UNRWA. Why? Instead to support UNRWA, let us buy pieces of lands in the West Bank and to start building neighborhoods for these refugees. They would love these refugees, by the way, to have a normal house, to have a normal school, to have a normal clinic, to have a normal situation. They would love. But we have problem. We have problem with these people, with these presidents, with these leaders who are just giving hundreds of billions of dollars for nothing, in turn to keep the Israeli-Palestinian conflict ongoing conflict. No plans at all in the West Bank right now. No conferences right now taking place in the West Bank. Why?
Why?
Because the Palestinian Authority has its own strategy
Right.
towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Right.
What is the strategy of the Palestinian Authority is to keep the current situation as a status quo.
So what?
Don't talk about it. Let us get, at the end of the month, $100 million Abbas receiving to pay salaries.
Right.
100 million. If we will make a state tomorrow morning, nobody will give us a penny. So we don't need it. We don't need it.
Right.
And I think that that's almost proves what's happened with the former Palestinian Prime Minister in 2013, Salam Fayyad. Salam Fayyad used to be one of the most perfect Palestinian leaders.
So why not hit him instead of Dalan? Why didn't you name him instead of Dalan?
Yeah, because
he's got credibility.
He will never come back to politics because he was kicked out by Abbas.
So, but,
He was kicked out by Abbas. Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
just a minute.
Okay.
He was kicked out by Abbas. Now, Salam Fayyad is a person who ran the Palestinian, let's say, government for 6 years, from 2007, since the Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, until 2013. And he came very clearly to all of the leaders around the world by saying, listen, now it is very early to talk about the Palestinian state. Let us build the institutions.
Right.
Let us build the economy. Let us build the refugee camps. Then we can talk about that. And he started his plan. He started, and another important topic, how to fight corruption under the Palestinian Authority. Now, Abbas never ever gave him the opportunity, neither to build the institutions, nor to build the economic sources of the state. Abbas came to him one night and saying, excuse me, who told you that we want a state? Go home. And this is how Salam Fayyad was fired. So Abbas is not interested to change
Right.
the current situation. Because who is benefiting from the current situation? Only the Palestinian Authority. Money and power from all of the world.
So what's stopping you and 10 other Spark guys from making plans? So what if you don't have powers? The plan is there. Because eventually you will have power.
But you couldn't speak. You couldn't make a conference tomorrow in Ramallah. You couldn't make a conference tomorrow in Ramallah.
Aha, okay.
And to say, come on, we want to solve it. We want to guarantee at least, our economic future. The Palestinian Authority and its own security forces will never ever allow you. You know there was a conference. 1 minute. There was a conference, 2 months ago in Ramallah. You know what was the title of Ramallah, of the conference in Ramallah? What's after Abbas? You couldn't believe. People were arrested during the conference. Then Abbas said, listen, I didn't die. I am still alive. What does it mean? What is after Abbas? Come on. People kept for 16 days in jail. I wish that I would never get such kind of position. This is number one. Number two, I will come tomorrow morning to Netanyahu by telling Netanyahu, listen, Mr. Prime Minister, give me 6 months to clean my territory. 6 months. Will you help me to clean it? I'm quite sure the Israelis will provide everything that they can in terms to clean it. To clean it from incitement and from hatred. Secondly, I will ask the international community to stop supporting all of these fake international organizations. From UNRWA to UNESCO. Stop. Give us the money. Make a fund. Make a fund and bring this money and put it in that fund. We want to see in 2 years how much money we are going to get, and to start establishing, destroying the refugee camps, and building a new neighborhoods with a kind of a normal, let me say, a life for the Palestinians. This is one of the most important things that I probably will start it tomorrow morning. Two things.
Stop funding terror.
Two things. First of all, the funding to the Palestinian Authority should have to be controlled. Secondly, if UNRWA is not going to change its own education curriculum, the US shouldn't have to give one penny to UNRWA, because the money that the US is giving to UNRWA today, UNRWA is using it for terror by teaching the Palestinian students how to commit suicide. At least in Gaza, the Israelis are not related at all, and the Israelis are, Gaza is not under the Israeli rule. Let us start from Gaza. You know, okay, let's say that the Israelis are not interested to stop it.
Don't want that.
What about to start in Gaza today? What about to start in Gaza? In Gaza. In Gaza. To start in Gaza. Okay, leave the West Bank. Let us take it in two different parts, yeah? I am not so hurried, yeah? I don't want to make it fast. Let us start in Gaza. Is there any Israelis in Gaza? Will Israel will defend supporting the schools of Gaza tomorrow morning? Of course not. Of course not. So let's start from Gaza. You know, I try to suggest to you, representative at the Capitol Hall, the Hill, to probably to fund only the West Bank and to stop funding Gaza. To stop funding Gaza. Iran is funding Gaza, by the way. Why the Americans should have to fund Gaza? And the Americans paying much more money than the Iranians paying much more money than the Americans, by the way. So I think that the Americans should have to show a kind of process of a goodwill towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is what I want to see from Mr. Trump.
I did want to mention, just following up with this one last point on UNRWA, I think that you were there, Stephen. Emmett hosted and I sat on the panel at our offices earlier this year. Edwin Black has begun an initiative to replace the UN with something called the Council of Democratic Nations. I was very proud to sit on that panel, and if you go to Emmett's website, again, emmettonline.org, you could find the recording of that panel discussion about UNRWA and other issues relating to the UN, and Edwin Black has been traveling the world, the globe, not just the states, with that proposal.